Oh, it looks like my photographer is telling me they are arresting someone right now. See if we can get a little bit closer. Like I mentioned, I'm not surprised that they made this arrest quickly because deputies have made their presence clear that they are not going to tolerate any form of chaos.
So as you may have heard in the case that has sort of gripped the nation by storm, today Karmelo Anthony was found guilty of murdering Austin Metcalf in a verdict that came down fairly quickly and unanimously because, after all, this is not that gray of a case. I mean, it is pretty straight up. Karmelo Anthony murdered Austin Metcalf in cold blood for absolutely no justified reason, but in a manner that you may actually be able to predict if you witnessed BLM, and I would argue actually the O.J. Simpson trial before that. That's kind of where this stuff all began to start. We currently have a crowd of race communists, I guess we'll say, but let's be honest, predominantly, overwhelmingly, Black Americans who are currently outside demanding that Karmelo Anthony be freed. Apparently, their whole argument here, and honestly, the central question of this case is whether or not it's okay for a Black person to murder a white person in cold blood and get away with it on the basis simply of their race. Like, that's really all there is to it. It is that simple. But apparently the answer, according to these people, is yes, actually. And I'll be fair, this is not the attitude of every Black person. Okay, I'm not like painting the whole racial group as a whole. Let's be clear about that, YouTube. But I think we should also just be honest and realistic and admit that this attitude is fairly mainstream. Majority or not, I'm not here to decide the statistics, but yes, fairly mainstream in the Black community, because again, we've seen this type of stuff happen before, this very tribalistic mindset where just so long as the person is Black and the crime happened against or towards or whatever a white person, it's perfectly justified no matter what happens. I mean, this again started back during the OJ trial where we had Black jurors come out and quietly admit years later that yes, indeed, they ruled him not guilty, not because they didn't think he did it, but rather because they just wanted to get back at white America. Like, that's literally a thing that happened, and you wonder why that trial went the way it did. I think the answer there is quite clear. Of course, we saw the same thing during BLM, where no matter how justified, an instance of police or George Zimmerman acting in self-defense are, because the person is Black, we're going to burn down half the country over that. And arguably, the useful idiots who have played along with all those race communist social movements throughout the years have really led us to this point where we're getting like pretty open admissions from crowds of Black leftists, I guess we'll put it that way, right? Or ghetto, whatever, right? Who are going out there and now just openly basically saying, yeah, it's okay for our people to murder their people. And I think it goes without saying that this attitude, okay, not these people, but this attitude, YouTube, is something that is fundamentally incompatible with Western civilization or civilization as a whole, right? If we're actually supposed to live in this supposedly multicultural society that celebrates diversity as the left, frames it, right? The melting pot, then you would think it's pretty highly problematic to have a mainstream prevailing attitude among certain racial groups that not only do they resent the other racial groups and want to start a race war, which is basically happening right now, but that it's actually okay to just straight up murder other members of the other racial group, and that's perfectly fine. That's not something that society can survive by. I mean, that's the point at which society breaks down. But let's also be real. The communists kind of pulling the strings of all of this absolutely know that to be the case. They don't actually want to have a diverse or multicultural society. They basically want their oppressed minority groups to rise up against whitey, and frankly, honestly, just transparently, a very violent way. I mean, you're seeing that right now. And this is the end result of that. So I would argue, it's all perfectly by design. There is a reason why leftists, again, have cheered on this type of behavior to the point it is today outside of that courthouse, where we're just reaching the extreme of extremes. And I don't know, let that just be a wake-up call of the reality of race relations in America. These people can celebrate the civil rights or whatever they want, but in reality, I think we're finding out it was never actually about judging people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Because as you see, when that happens, when we actually do that, we judge Karmelo Anthony by the content of his character, they literally rise up and start a riot. And it doesn't stop there. Apparently, we're also seeing Karmelo Anthony supporters act in a very similar fashion, I'll say, starting violence outside of the courthouse. I mean, there's fights going on, there's brawls. Let's get into all of this today. Let's break down the case, why it was so easy to rule Karmelo Anthony guilty, and then the reactions from people that is very telling. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, so you probably have seen a bunch of other conservative channels cover this case. I've not done so yet because I have to try to say this all in a way that won't get me banned from YouTube, frankly, because it's very enraging, but let's try to do that, okay? So Karmelo Anthony. Basically, this all happened at a track meet in the Frisco Independent School District back in 2025, where 17-year-old white kid by the name of Austin Metcalf, he's a white student athlete, track runner at Memorial High School, is basically coming down to his area where, the track meet, right, the kids are sitting in the benches, and this is all under the team tent during a weather delay belonging to Memorial High School. So Metcalf School has their team tent, and Karmelo Anthony, who is from an opposing school, already showing up clearly to cause all sorts of problems, shows up to the Memorial High School tent and just decides to sit in the area. And what happens next, what proceeds, is a verbal dispute where Austin Metcalf, over the span of the next 4 to 6 minutes, is telling Karmelo Anthony he needs to leave. Witnesses allege that Karmelo Anthony was cursing, provoking, and insulting others. So he's refusing to leave, first of all. I mean, totally in the wrong, right? He's literally in the other team's tent. What are you doing? And repeatedly warned things like, quote, touch me and see what happens, or touch me and find out, while keeping his hand in his backpack. So, clearly he's like making threats, his hand's down there, what's going on here? Metcalf apparently then shoves or pushes Anthony to force him out. So keep in mind, high school kids shoving each other, right? We're not talking about, he's not punching him, he's not wailing him, he's not doing anything crazy. He gives him a shove, in which case Karmelo Anthony, then what he has in his backpack, he pulls out a 3.5-inch folding knife from his backpack, stabs Metcalf once in the chest, and Austin Metcalf, as you may know, ended up dying on the scene. So that's how this all went down. Now, pretty clear cut, I think, for anyone with common sense. Okay, first of all, you guys are high school kids. He's carrying around a knife in his backpack. That's kind of strike one here, and Karmelo is obviously the one provoking the whole situation, being in the other team's tent. But the Anthony defense was basically that he was acting in self-defense, right? They tried to use the whole Texas stand your ground thing where it's like, he was in fear for his life. He was in imminent danger, except here's the thing. Clearly, that's not true, okay? They're just asking you to leave. He shoves you, okay? High school kids shoving each other, and we're supposed to believe Metcalf had some even reasonable amount of maybe a reason to believe he was trying to murder or kill or cause serious bodily harm to Karmelo Anthony. No, but also the place where really Karmelo Anthony's defense fundamentally falls apart is that, going by the facts of the case, before Austin Metcalf lays hands at all on Karmelo Anthony and pushes him at all, which again, I'm going to argue, I think is really not actually a life-threatening type of thing, a high school kid shoving another high school kid at a track meet, right? But even before that, Karmelo Anthony already has his hand in his backpack and is making threats, basically saying, come touch me and see what finds out, which I think further proves it was not actually a self-defense situation. It was basically he was trying to figure out a reason or a way to end up stabbing Austin Metcalf, and that ended up being the case here. Okay, so along basically every stretch of the way, it's very clear this kid came to cause problems. He had the full intention of pulling out that knife and using it, and ended up that's exactly what he did. Okay, so there you have it, right? You would think this is not really a case that leftists ought to get all that involved in, because it's just like straight up. I mean, he's not allowed to do that. That's murder, okay? And it's honestly a very tragic situation. But currently, in response to that verdict, take a listen to the voices we're hearing outside of the courthouse.
What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for it. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more. You can't walk away no more.
Rest in peace, Trayvon Martin. Let me ask you this.
What do you want us to do? I don't know. Don't bring knives to high school track meets and stab people in cold blood. It's really not that difficult, you know? Karmelo Anthony could have just left, first of all, you know, if he wanted to avoid the whole thing. Even then, you know, Austin shoves him. Hey, even if Karmelo shoves him back and then goes on with his business, you know, okay, it's a little scuffle, whatever. There's so many points along the way which Karmelo just didn't have to pull out a knife and freaking kill someone, right? And these lunatics, these morons are sitting here acting as Karmelo didn't have any choice than to show up to a high school track meet, go to the other team's tent, try to provoke a fight, and then the moment he gets shoved, freaking pull out a knife. You know, it's like, it's not that difficult. But maybe you're seeing the point, which is that this is not actually a case of rationality, right? It's not about arguing the facts of the case. These people don't care about that. It is actually this very tribalistic, arguably, I'm not going to use that word, but very non-modern mindset. Okay, let's put it that way. Pre-Enlightenment mindset of, well, again, my tribe versus your tribe, therefore, no matter what, I'm going to stick up with for my tribe. You know, it's just that's what this is. That's what's really happening here. Okay. Because again, this case of all things to try to pick a hill to die on is not really the one you would think is even all that gray, but they are indeed out there doing that right now. And then you even notice this guy in the back brings up the Trayvon Martin case. Okay, you may remember this was really what set off BLM to begin with. I think it was, what, 2012, 2014, somewhere along there. And this happened because, you know, there was an altercation in the neighborhood, I think Neighborhood Watch or something, where Trayvon Martin, this black person, is standing on top of George Zimmerman, who you may remember, that infamous guy, right? Wailing on him. Okay, so he's on top of him. He's brought him to the ground. He's punching him in the head. He allegedly, according to Zimmerman's testimony, is like bashing his head into the concrete. And then in that case, after being on the ground, which they forensically proved looking at his knees and all that, Zimmerman ended up opening fire and shooting Trayvon Martin, and Zimmerman argued self-defense because he was in legitimate fear for his life. Because after all, even though Trayvon Martin was unarmed, hey, he's on the he's got you on the ground, bashing your head into the concrete. Yes, that can cause severe bodily injury, or you can even die from that. But according to BLM, according to large subsets of Black America, according to the political left, George Zimmerman should have been found guilty of murder because, you know, apparently self-defense doesn't exist. And so he ended up getting off thanks to, you know, Florida stay on your ground and self-defense laws and all that. But okay, so according to these people, you know, this is where I say it's not even worth having a logical or rational argument because it's not about that. So George Zimmerman shooting Trayvon Martin when he's bashing his head into the concrete is not justified at all. That's not self-defense. But Austin Metcalf at a freaking track meet between two sports teams shoving you out of the tent justifies, in a premeditated sense, stabbing Austin Metcalf and killing him, right? Like, how dumb you would think it is logically to bring up Trayvon Martin, understanding that, yeah, it actually really damages your case if you thought Trayvon Martin should have, or George Zimmerman, I should say, should have been convicted of, you know, not acting in self-defense, that apparently you're also going to claim Karmelo Anthony was acting in self-defense. I mean, clearly your level of, you know, legal basis is just completely off. But again, that assumes we're having a rational conversation. I'll explain to you exactly what it is. Trayvon Martin was black. Karmelo Anthony was black. They're siding with a black person. That's all there is to it, you know? And I don't know what to tell you besides that, you know? Maybe it's something deeper than just left-wing woke brainwashing. Maybe it's, again, like literally just a tribalistic mindset among some individuals, a maybe even just lack of ability to like understand any concept of individual justice here, right? And that's just all that we're watching. I mean, straight up. It doesn't stop there, by the way, because, there's actually a lot of places along the way where the arguments of these race communists completely fall apart. First of all, the fact that black teammates, track teammates of Austin Metcalf testified against Karmelo Anthony because they were witnesses to the situation. And guess what? They testified basically in favor of Austin Metcalf because even Austin Metcalf's probably black friends saw what they saw. And guess what we got? We got these people out here referring to those black witnesses as effectively race traitors, right? They couldn't possibly believe why, in a case that in their eyes, this is black America versus white America, individual black people who were friends with Austin Metcalf might have seen, I don't know, that white person as a human being or something deserving of, first of all, rights and justice, but secondly, their friend who got murdered in cold blood. And yeah, it's like, this is the level of tribal clan warfare mentality that we're actually dealing with. And, I think it arguably explains a lot about the state of race relations and racial politics in our country. But I'm not making that up.
They got 4 black people to testify against Karmelo Anthony. Yeah, what? Are they supposed to say that he's innocent just because he's black? That's fucking stupid. What do you mean? You go to school with someone, they're your peer, you're on the same sports team as them, you see them every day, and they get randomly murdered. Oh, I shouldn't testify against this random student from another school that murdered this dude that I know because that guy is the same race as me. That's fucking dumb. What do you mean? And this got 1.2 million views. A bunch of people on Twitter, a bunch of people in general in the public think like this.
Again, just utter insanity. And then leftists call us far right or extreme or white supremacists for suggesting that America's headed down some type of South Africa, modern South Africa style path, or even that we bring up this stuff is happening in South Africa. Well, of course, the very subsets of the country that they pander to, that they cheer on, are acting in exactly this way. It's insane. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, just look at some of the scenes outside of the Karmelo Anthony trial for yourself, and you'll sort of just notice this pattern of that honestly maybe should terrify you, and it does. But
Say his name. Karmelo. Say his name. Karmelo.
This is a war. This is a war.
Yeah. I forgot, and the twin brother would have been with him. Fuck you saying.
They should have both been arrested.
They both should have been dead. The both brothers.
yeah, so you hear them saying it themselves. This is a war, which means they believe they should be provoking race war over this. Even the lady at the end says they should have both been dead, which I'm sure she's saying out of a legal justification of self-defense. I'm sure that's what it's about, right? She just believes it was legally justifiable under Texas law and not the fact that she just has bloodlust against white people. And again, this is how a lot of people think. I'm not going to say everybody, a lot of people think, okay? Just truth. It's reality. And, definitely you shouldn't look at this and question whether due to this race communism, society will fall apart. No, actually, it's white people's duty to march alongside people who think like this, right? And again, I'm going to go back to that. Think about all of the characters who sat there during BLM and these are the people they are caucusing alongside. Yeah. It just tells you a lot, right? Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer freaking bending the knee with those stupid African garbs. I mean, that's actually how we led to this point. This is the very mindset. This is the very attitude. These are the very people that, the years of race communist politics infiltrating the Democrat Party have led to. And, just let it be said. I mean, in one way or another, this is emblematic of the greater political left. I mean, the Democrats can try to publicly sit there and ignore maybe the more extreme versions of this stuff and pretend as if it's not happening, but this is their voter base. This is who these people answer to, right? Like Jasmine Crockett, for example, might not be there, but how do you think she feels about this court case? I mean, let's just be real about that. And you don't think she's aware that a lot of her supporters literally think this way? Again, this very tribalistic, basic mindset, right? No, obviously that's the case. And, if you want to say it's just crazy lunatics in the street, I would point out that first of all, these are technically American citizens of this country as well. Like, you have to share a country with these people. This is Dallas, Texas, by the way. This is not some deep blue woke stronghold or something like that, right? So you can see this mentality permeates parts of red states as well, right? But even on live TV, we have characters making the same exact argument. So just keep in mind, it's not just like a couple mentally ill people in the streets who think this way. This, I will repeat, is a fairly growing, widespread, and prevailing attitude, okay?
I mean, I'm questioning the jury. I'm asking them, how did you reach your verdict? How did you reach it so quickly? What happened? It was a 4-inch knife. He used it one time. He was pushed. I'm not saying that it was right, but what are you doing? How did you get this verdict? I'd want to know. My whole identity as a defense attorney would be in question, right? I'm questioning my identity right now, and I have nothing to do with this case. How could you come back like that? I would be enraged. I'm enraged right now. This is very upsetting. And then on top of it, to compound it, this dumb judge didn't allow cameras in the courtroom.
And these are supposed lawyers and legal experts, by the way. Oh, he used a 4-inch knife. Oh, okay. What difference does that make? So if you kill someone with your hands or something, therefore it's not murder, or the length of the blade, or is murder based on whether you took someone's life or the instrument used? I'm not even sure what that's supposed to mean. And by the way, I don't know the exact rules in Texas, but I will know for myself going to high school, you're not even allowed to be carrying a freaking 4-inch knife to high school or whatever, right? So what are you talking about? And, he says, oh, he got pushed. Okay. So the very same people who thought Trayvon Martin was allowed to bash George Zimmerman's head into the concrete think that being pushed clearly is a reason to have your life threatened and pull out a knife and freaking not even brandish it, not even try to say, hey, back off, freaking just kill some kid. It's these people. Again, there's no reasoning with these people. I'm going to reiterate, I don't think it's about the substance of the case. We can sit here and argue all day long, but at the end of the day, we really know the mentality we're dealing with. We do you think these people care? Do you think do you think these people actually care? Because we see it every single time, let's be honest, that this happens a lot where you'll have for instance, a black criminal who commits bad crimes and transparently, and it's not in doubt whether they did it. And how many times do we hear, right? Free my boy, free him, right? Just because he's part of my tribe. That's it. It's literally clan mentality that, again, is not actually compatible with anything modern Western civilization is supposed to be about. But, this is what we're dealing with. And I'm not going to pretend to know what the particular realistic solution is to it. Okay. I'm not calling for anything stupid or whatever. Right. But, at the very least, I will say that I think our political and social culture, first of all, needs to stop pandering to the race communists, right? Don't even give them an inch, because I'd argue to a large extent there's sort of, whether it's reparations or welfare or even criminal justice, they're just grifting off of the guilt and the supposed empathy, I guess, of white America. I mean, that's really what's going on, right? And you see, it's literally just a grift. Look at the amount of rates at which welfare is just mass abused, or the criminal justice system is mass abused, but then they say, no, but racism, but MLK or something, So first of all, I'd argue society needs to just stop entertaining that crap. And then, secondly, probably our criminal justice system maybe needs to just get a lot more serious, right? Just a total show that people are not going to be allowed to get away with this stuff simply because they're black, which I'd argue, even if, this is a good ruling, but to a large extent is still true in this country, right? I mean, we see it all the time. Because a criminal is black, they get let off of what otherwise, would be considered crimes, but they write them off on misdemeanors, minor crimes, let you out of jail. And then what happens? Those very same criminals with a repeat behavior, I don't think they're rehabilitating, right? I don't see that happening. But then they go on and murder someone, and we're like, oh, well, that's just a unpreventable tragedy. It always was. It always was preventable. But, this is what we're dealing with, okay? And by the way, the story doesn't even stop there, because in behavior that you could expect, much like Karmelo Anthony himself, we see Karmelo Anthony's supporters now resorting to violence out in the streets, and we see fights breaking out, police making arrests after Karmelo Anthony supporters are raging at the verdict. So, very in character, right? The argument always was, he didn't do nothing, he was peaceful, he was a good law-abiding kid, so we're going to prove that as his his supporters by also getting violent like he was. You know, it's just very telling.
Emotion on both sides. It's become a racial case, so that has heightened things as well. And the last, it looks like my photographer is telling me they are arresting someone right now. See if we can get a little bit closer. Like I mentioned, I'm not surprised that they made this arrest quickly because deputies here have been making sure that. Sorry, we are moving a little bit closer. I'm not surprised that this arrest happened quickly because deputies have made their presence clear that they are not going to tolerate any form of chaos, and looks like they have taken him out.
Yeah, well, isn't that just so on brand? Isn't that just so in character? But look, you know, I think it's an example as well of give these people an inch and they take a mile. And sure, I think a lot of the characters you see in the streets would probably be tribalistic anyway, but still, there's something to be said about the fact that, well, I mean, when you show a bunch of bad faith, ill-intended members of society that this is a two-tiered system they can take advantage of, right? We're not going to be serious anymore as a country about stopping crime in their parts of the city or about even political social issues. You know, look at the leniency we give there where, oh, you know, I mean, other members of society will march alongside you as you burn down the streets over, you know, your racial tribalism and all that. And that's perfectly okay. And then we give. And guess what? They realize, oh, we can take full advantage of this situation. And then, you know, this is what you get. You get violence. You get people, you know, looting, taking advantage of the situation. And I don't know, better late than never, I guess. You know, this needs to be the moment where we just make it abundantly clear this stuff is not going to be allowed to stand. And no, it doesn't mean the police are going to arrest you and let you out of jail the next day. It means you're going to face severe legal life consequences for messing around anymore in this country. And that's the country we honestly need to be, right? We cannot have like a high trust or libertarian leaning justice system in this country when you're dealing with people who take full advantage, right? They act like low trust people in high trust society, and that even includes criminal justice in itself, right? It's not an issue of when they think that, you know, the legal system is telling you, oh, well, you need to be rehabilitated, you made a mistake, but it's okay. You know, they don't take that in good faith. They're just like, oh, I can just keep on breaking the law and basically getting away with it. Okay, I'm going to keep on doing it. And that's what you get, you know? But anyways, there you have it. I'll leave it there for now, okay? Because I don't want to get too crazy over this. For now, that's just the situation, okay? Let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace. Oh, and by the way, an update as we're recording this. So the sentence was just handed down for murder, and the prosecution wanted as little as 2 years, you know, a typical slap on the wrist. Hey, here is a positive development. For once, we are seeing a violent criminal face severe consequences for murdering someone. The sentence now is 35 years in prison. So 35 years is now the sentence. It's more or less kind of what you sometimes consider to be close to a life sentence. So there you go. All right, there you go. At least for once, we're going to make an example out of someone that it's not okay to just murder white people in cold blood. And, you know, it's not, oh, he was just a kid. He made an accident. We're going to let him out and he's going to do it again. And we're just going to say he didn't do nothing, free my boy. Nope, not this time around. So one can only imagine this is going to add more fuel to the protests, but this is indeed the right decision. So there you have it. Brief update. But yeah. God save our country. What else can I say?